Hi, and welcome back to the Stanley Parable. And so this time, I've actually, as you've seen me start playing it, I'm already in the office. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is, again, because of this being a VR mod and the way you run it up and stuff like that, I always seem to have to run it up once and then kill it and run it up again to get rid of the desktop window showing the game being overlaid over the game. I'm not sure what's going on there. There's some weirdness with Steam and maybe the fact we've got OBS running or whatever, I don't know. So that probably didn't help. But then on top of that, at the start of my last session, when it went through all that like asking questions stuff and everything, it said I won't be asking you these again, and it didn't. So I'm guessing that's the point. This game just never ceases to amaze me. Right. I'm not going to click on that.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Oh. Figurine Finders Committee meeting today in the meeting room. It's trying to make me go into the meeting room. The bucket's still there. I was looking, when I finished the last session, I was looking there for the bucket, wasn't I? But actually the bucket's here. Should I take the bucket?
Stanley lifted the bucket into his arms, and a wave of comfort rushed over him. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
You see, I don't know what to do now, because should I play another session where I do as I'm told, or should I completely ignore what I'm being told? But I'm intrigued by the figurine collectors committee thing. There will be a reward for finding them all. Oh my god. Trust the completionist instinct. Okay, it's all definitely changed in here. Maybe we are collectibles. Shut the frick up. To whom it may concern. I managed to pick up sounds unusual to our regular office ambiences, our local audio sources, using an array of cardioid microphones, also known as directional. What? Analysis of this. Am I just failing to read, or are those words weird? I managed to pick up sounds unusual to our regular office ambiences. Oh, okay. All local radio sources using. Apparently, I just can't read. I can't read in VR very well, anyway. Analysis of the recordings allowed me to triangulate the source of the strange noise. Data shows that, in all likelihood, it's coming from a dark area behind a very warm place. I also picked up what looks to be reverberance of a porcelain surface. Anyone have any leads on this? So it's in the toilets. Weird spinning figurines. Idea. Employee 421 building a bridge. Saw one in cargo room. Do we need contracts for them? Potential liability. NDA. Why floating? Yes, why floating? And again, as I said last time, because I've never played this before, I don't know how much of this was in the original and how much of this is deluxe edition content and stuff like that. That looks like a toilet. That looks like a toilet, doesn't it? Warehouse access plan. Produce one plank to allow ease of access past fence. Construct bridge to allow collection of shiny flow. Retrieve Chris's remains from the warehouse floor. Construct new structurally sound bridge. That's where I killed myself recently as well, isn't it? Places to search. Inside the sequel exhibit, yeah. Nearby a fireplace. Did I get that? I did, didn't I? It's actually ticked off the ones I got. A private but smelly place for an important person. I think the boss's toilet, isn't it? Just in case.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked
I got the
upstairs
bucket.
to the boss's office.
Forgot about the bucket. Yes!
Another miniature Stanley figurine. This, you know, there really must be a snappier name for these things. What about mini-stands? Stanley figs? What about Stanlerines? Yes, I think I like that. Another Stanlerine under your belt.
Cool. Do you know what one for real? Money in the morning, money in the evening, money for breakfast. Moody crisp. Moody crisp. Moody crisp. What happens if I go back down now? Oh, let me go through there. Let's go down here. I've been down here for a while.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fined for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished.
Am I going to get
His boss would think he was
the
crazy.
woman staring
And
at my
then
corpse thing
something
again?
occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy.
Can't go back.
He looked down at the bucket in his arms. Am I crazy? He asked the bucket.
Oh, I've got the bucket with me
returned
this
his
time
gaze,
though. This is
but said
different,
nothing
right?
at all. That's strange, Stanley thought. Usually the bucket is a source of guidance and wisdom for me in difficult times such as these. He held the bucket close, yet felt none of its familiar reassurance and comfort. And that's when Stanley realized, this isn't my bucket. It's just a normal, everyday bucket. Someone else's bucket, perhaps. How did I end up with someone else's bucket? This is all terribly wrong. Surely no good would come from this. Who knows what sorts of bizarre hallucinations Stanley might experience without the psychologically grounding presence of his bucket. And indeed, now he noticed that the rooms were repeating, which was, of course, very odd.
I knew that anyway.
Now he felt himself floating off the ground. Oh,
Way.
he exclaimed. Without my bucket, I've gone truly mad. Where is it? I must find it. Far off in the distance now, he heard it, calling to him. Stanley! Stanley, it's me, the bucket.
Where are you, bucket?
Could it truly be?
Oh.
He rushed forward from room to room,
No.
passing by one
No.
bucket after the next.
No.
None of them
No.
were his. None
No.
of them were his special bucket.
Oh, that's two buckets.
Stanley, find me.
Two buckets
He
in
had
one.
to find the bucket. He had to return to his old friend. It was the only way to truly restore his sanity.
Give me my bucket back.
He froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from.
Inside my
The
head.
real bucket was inside of him all along. It was incredibly painful. Stanley doubled over in agony and blacked out.
Do you know, I was really hoping we're going to get that scene with a woman looking over my body.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Hey, Mariella.
Mariella woke up on a day like any other.
See, I was hoping to get to this bit.
Dressed, picked up her bucket of comfort and security.
She's got a
walked to her
bucket.
place of work.
Oh,
On this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town, talking and screaming to himself.
I
and then
was
collapsed
wondering
dead on the
if
sidewalk.
I'd see
Right
this with
away,
me
she
dead
knew
on the
what the
sidewalk
problem
holding a
was.
bucket. But
This
she's got the
man
bucket.
had no bucket. Of course he'd gone mad, ranting and raving about a narrator describing all of his actions and how everything is predetermined and free will is an illusion and it's all just a video game. It could all have been prevented if only he'd taken his bucket with him. Perhaps he didn't even realize he'd forgotten his bucket at home in the first place. How cruel the world can be, Marietta thought, and she hugged her own bucket even tighter. But of course, she had no time for this. There were a myriad of confusing problems she would soon have to confront at work, for which her bucket would provide absolute guidance and total clarity on everything. Heck yes, she thought to herself, my life kicks ass. And she backflipped all the way to work.
Mariella seems cool. Oh! Okay, it was a really quick session last time because I only did the one run through, but that was a quick one again. So I'm going to do another run through, see where it takes us.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley
The
decided
sign's
to go
still
to the
there.
meeting room. Perhaps he had
Should I
simply
go
missed a
without my
memo.
bucket this time? I'm going to go without my bucket this time. I'm going to do the same steps, but without the bucket.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Okay, meeting room, check all the things, blah de blah de blah. Yeah, that's all cool.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Go check the toilet. No figurine, because we got the figurine. Come back, go back down. I'm going to go all the way downstairs. And then replay this section again. But without the
But
bucket.
Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss. Admitting he had left his post during work hours, he might be fired
Skip.
for that. And in
Skip.
such a competitive economy,
Want you to
why
skip.
had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe
I didn't get
am
the
crazy.
being in space thing
All of my
last time either,
co-workers
did I?
blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down?
I think this is just
Why
going to
did
be
doors close
what I ran
automatically
through
behind him
before.
wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they
Yeah.
simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming, he yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley
Okay,
felt.
we're just
to
going to have to go
finally
through the
found an
same
answer,
thing.
An explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground.
Okay, we got the
Then
flying.
he imagined himself soaring through space
Yeah,
on a
we're
magical
back to
star.
the original
And it
loop
too
through
appeared.
here.
It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts.
Okay, I'm just going to have to go through this
And while he
again.
thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course,
So the question
this
is,
was
I
not a
didn't
dream.
pick the bucket up.
How could it be?
So does that mean
Was
Mariella
Stanley
won't
simply
have the
deceiving
bucket?
himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please. It's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life.
Do we
exactly
actually have
the
any
way it's
evidence,
always been.
other than that line there, that Stanley
My
has a
life
wife?
is normal. I am normal.
Have we seen any mention of that?
Everything will be fine. I am okay. Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
This is a story.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
And she doesn't have a
Mariella
bucket.
woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But
Okay.
on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone
Can't
knows what
skip.
crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself of how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind.
Well, let me skip.
I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
So, if I'm going to go back down into the basement, going without the bucket just gets me the same thing. Right, going to do
All
one
this
last
code
little
was
run
gone.
through.
What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. The confusion and
Just
the chaos
because.
all seemed to melt away as Stanley embraced the bucket.
I
Stanley
want
clutched the
to
bucket
see
tightly to
if,
his chest,
because I didn't really
and
pay
took the door
attention
on his left.
if that third location had been ticked off. It had. Okay. Somewhere both red and blue. Stairs. Something to do with stairs. A large room, lots of boxes. Do I remember those? And why am I on this quest? I just love how this game messes with you, because there is this thing of like, it's obviously taking the piss out of the completionist get all the achievements thing, and yet I want to do it. And I partly want to do it because I want to do it, because it feels like I'm making a goal for myself in here. It feels like I'm making a game for myself within the game, but the game's been made for me. And also in part, I'm doing it because I have this drive to do it, but I'm also doing it because the game seems to be trying to shame me into not doing it. So I'm doing it to spite the game. But the game also is designed such that it knows I'll probably do, and yeah, all those things on all those levels. I love that. There's going to be one in here in the end, right? Right.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
So I think we've exhausted all the possibilities down there. Can't go through there. So the next options are going to be through here. I've forgotten the
Stanley was
code.
once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human
What's
life.
the code?
Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and
Can't
chaos.
remember what the code
It
is.
would be with him, always. The bucket would. And he knew it. The two of them were
Isn't
inseparable.
it 2,
At
4...
this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual connection he shared with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the
Forgotten the
bucket
code.
did he have any notion
I should have memorised
that
the code
pin
by
number
now.
for the keypad was 2845.
Oh, it's close. I knew there was...
But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along?
Didn't I do
Was the
2,
bucket
4,
telling
5, 8
him?
or something like that?
Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Right, was it a room that was both red and blue or red and green? I feel like you have to have a good memory to actually be able to play this game properly. I should use those Steam notes that they added a while back. I don't know if they
The
even work in
elevator raced
VR.
downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine.
I really want to know if the bucket was part of the original game,
Stanley
but I
and the
don't
bucket
want to
walked
Google
straight
it.
ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death.
I've taken the bucket the other way, so I'm
The door
branching
behind
off
them
this
was not
early this
shut.
time.
Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track.
I actually can't
At
remember
this
what's
point,
down here.
Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Oh, yes. The crushing machine. Forgot about that. I forgot that was down
As the machine
here.
whirled into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's
This was
warmth and
Portal,
comfort
I'd be
had
jumping
turned
out
to
onto
be.
there, wouldn't I, and
To be
escaping
sure,
it.
it puts the mind and the soul at
The
ease
bucket
to
will save
embrace the
me.
bucket. But what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
The bucket will save me. I have faith in the bucket. Female narrator?
"Farewell, Stanley," cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end as it was crushed violently to death.
Or not? Da da da.
It was a shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious bucket to behold.
The bucket welcomes you to the grand exhibit.
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley
Oh,
to
what's my
take a
bucket?
bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be
Photograph
in
of
his
25
short
buckets.
life?
I think there's more than 25 buckets there. The greatest number of buckets ever captured on camera. The photographer experienced catatonic shock for several weeks as a result of the euphoria from exposure to this many buckets at once. It's more than 25 buckets there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's not bother. I was actually going to count how many were roughly across the bottom and across the side, and then a replica of the Inferno bucket, which in the medieval era was so powerfully alluring that it drove dozens of nations to war with one another for control of it. Billions died. I don't think billions of people were around at that time, were they? And yet, in spite of it all, the simple fact remains, no one can control a bucket. While we know that buckets predate the existence of mankind, we do not know by how long. This cave drawing depicts early man's discovery of the practical uses of the bucket, by which time the bucket had already likely been around for several millennia. Notice in these drawings how the bucket is allowing itself to be used, having judged humanity to be worthy of its treasures. I'm starting to think that bucket is actually a stand-in for cat. We could substitute the word cat.
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one.
See?
It is man who should kneel before
The
bucket.
cat. Now, hang it, this piece symbolises the necessary relationship between cat and humanity. However clear our grasp of the cat may be, there is yet more that is always out of reach. This distance inevitably is for our own good. I don't think there's a way out of this. Oh. I was so expecting to fall.
But there is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong. Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket. We can save the world's buckets from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler, as leader, as commander of a new world, a new vision of the...
Ow. It's gone dark. It's staying dark. We're reloading. Every time I think I may have explored, I don't imagine I have explored everything, but every time I feel like I've taken a route where it's going to repeat, it's like, no, it's now introduced the bucket into the whole thing. And as I say, I have no clue if the bucket is actually... That wasn't there before either, was it? I have no clue if the bucket is actually part of the original game or part of the... let me get close. I'm trying to lean over and have a look, but it's doing that thing of my head's getting too close to there, so it pushes me back in the world. Yeah, I have no clue. Try again. I've got no clue if I'm now caught in some loop of, the extra content for the Ultra Deluxe version, or if this is part of the original game, or even if there is actually have I bought the Ultra Deluxe version thinking there's more content, and there was actually all the same content in the original version, and it just spoke about the extra content. Maybe the original spoke about Ultra Deluxe version, and that's been the gag all along. And actually it's people like me who bought but never played the original, and then have bought it again, especially just so they can play the VR version, who've been trolled massively. And I think maybe I'm overthinking this now. I'm loving this game. I'm loving this game so much. Is it even a game? Really though? Anyway, I'm going to go now. So from this dip into the Stanley Parable, the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe Edition in VR. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.